Welcome, everyone. When AI speaks fluent, who thinks deep? I'm sure that question keeps you awake at night sometimes. I'm Vatsala. I work as a Senior Vice President Research in Bolt Insight, and I'm joined by Anne.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Anne, the Strategy and Insights Director at Pladis. Pladis might not be known, sorry, for most of you, but you most likely know brands like McVitie's, Godiva, Turtles, maybe in the US, and many channels as well. Let's put a little bit of a savory lens.
So we are here to talk about AI, and I was looking at both our outfits, and I thought I was the old guard, and Anne is the AI version of me. But moving on. We are here to not talk about AI as a villain or a savior. We are here to have a real conversation, honest conversation about lived experiences from insight professionals like Anne, who have worked closely and are at the front end and want to understand what's actually happening on the ground when insight professionals meet AI in the wild. So who are we? We are Bolt Insight. We are 100+ researchers, brand strategists, and technologists who are honestly a bit nuts about insights. If you know, our mascot is a squirrel, which is curious, and you would see it on our stand. We are based in London, Paris, Italy, Istanbul, New York, Sao Paulo, Singapore, Japan, and Philippines. And we have been recognized by MRS, SOMAR, Green Book, Quirk, and more. So great to have you here. We worked with some of the most trusted brands and insight teams in the industry. And trust is something we take really seriously. It is also why we felt compelled to talk about this topic today. Because when people responsible for understanding consumers start to wonder whether AI understands consumers better than them, then, well, that's when we need a true or proper reckoning. We really need to go under deep and understand that topic. Right, enough of pleasantries. We started this project not with a survey or a questionnaire. We started this topic with real human conversations. Because in a world full of AI-generated answers, the most honest and radical thing one can do is have real human conversations with people. So let's do exactly that. Why are we here today, and what's the intent for today? We are here to have and feed back to you these conversations we've had with early adopting CMI leaders. It's not a verdict, but it's a starting point of having these conversations, of raising this topic. We will share with you early signals from this conversation that we've had, and let's think about it as a long-running reality show. Except it is about data and not dating. So what we did was we did one-to-one AI moderated conversations with 14 of the leading edge CMI leaders, and they shared their candid perspective on how AI fits into their research, what challenges they face, and what they believe is coming next. To frame this discussion, we have created short avatar videos that synthesize what we heard from these CMI leaders. So the first insight explores the growing tension we all hear and think about. It is about AI taking on more and more of the work, more and more of the learning, the critical thinking, and judgment, especially for newcomers, could be at risk. Let's watch one of the videos representing what the CMI leaders talked about on this subject.
AI has changed the role of insights in one fundamental way. The value has moved from execution to judgment. It has accelerated research, delivery, and outputs. What it hasn't accelerated is thinking. What matters now is how we interpret results, challenge them, and decide what's meaningful enough to act on. That's why I worry more about judgment than tools, especially for junior researchers. AI delivers confident answers instantly, and without experience, confidence can be mistaken for insight. Using AI well still requires curiosity, experience, and critical thinking, and those don't develop automatically. Today, most AI learning is ad hoc, tool-led, generic, and informal. That puts pressure on individuals and creates reliance on a small group of AI champions. The real risk isn't adoption speed. It's tools evolving faster than human capability. So the question isn't how fast we adopt AI. It's how we learn to think well with it at scale.
Recent researches show that AI encourages what's called cognitive offloading. It's essentially saying, let the machine do the thinking. So, if that happens consistently, what do we lose? We do save a lot of time, but that quietly erodes capabilities that actually are integral to our insight community and brand community. De-skilling and erosion came up as two key themes from the insight leaders that we talked to. So my first question to Anne would be, what is how to train newcomers in insight?
Well, if I had to simplify it, I would say that they are training newcomers in insights. It's about re-anchoring two things that no technology can automate. The first thing is about consumer and shopper empathy. It's not only important to understand what people say, but it's very important for insights newcomers to understand, how to observe, how to feel, how to interpret what often goes unspoken. The second thing is commercial judgment. And commercial judgment, doesn't happen by chance. It happens by learning. And very early on in their careers, insights professionals are asked to move fast to findings, but not only. More importantly, what we are asked to do is to move to business recommendations. And moving to business recommendation means having a thorough understanding on how your ideas played out against a P&L reality. How does it resonate with the CFO? A commercial reality. How does it play out against customer constraints like range rationalization and operational constraints that our customers experience? And ultimately, regulations. We've been, bombarded with regulations over the past few years. So AI can absolutely, scale and offer insights at speed and at scale. But what it cannot do is to decide, one, what matters most, what will land, and ultimately, what will grow your business. And this judgment, this commercial judgment, is learned. It's not something that you get when you start in a new insight role. And it's learned through exposure, experience, but also, deep connection to the consumer, but also the commercial reality. So for me, if I had to summarize, the role of training newcomers in AI would be about making sure that they understand that AI will not give you answers. It will help strengthen your thinking. And this is happening while we, insights leader, continuously and deliberately continue to invest in these human capabilities that truly differentiate great insights professionals.
Right? And do you think the speed has increased even in the insight area of how quickly things have to be moved along and worked on?
Well, yes, I think speed has increased because we operate in a very unpredictable world. And you probably, have felt what I feel every day, which is, I don't understand where we come from. You need to figure out how we're getting there, and I need to know the answer now. So yes, in that sense, it has accelerated. But for me, in these times, what is very important is to recognize that while AI, automates the doing, AI automates basically the work that we do, it doesn't automate yet the judgment that we overlay onto things. And this takes time. And I think for me, the energy that we put in creating new ideas is probably shifting to curating new ideas. How do we apply our human judgment and consumer empathy onto this? For me, is very important. And it takes time.
Great, thank you. So from discovery to data collection, to synthesizing the findings, to actually activating and storytelling, AI is present all through the project or the insight lifecycle. The question is no longer whether AI can do it. AI can do pretty much everything. But the bigger question is, should it do that? And when AI handles the doing, as you just said, what happens to the knowing? So it's the knowing we need to go deeper into as insight professionals. Here's another video summarizing some of the things that our leaders talk about.
I genuinely believe AI will fundamentally transform the insights function, and that's a very good thing. And this transformation is already happening. In discovery and framing, AI accelerates brainstorming and early exploration. In data collection, and especially qualitative, it's moving fast. AI-led conversations, unmoderated testing, transcription, translation, and scaling across markets. But the real shift is in synthesis and analysis. That's where I trust AI most. Spotting patterns, connecting weak signals, and making sense of complexity at speed and scale. In output and activation, AI helps translate insights, sharpening narratives, simplifying decks, accelerating communication. Looking ahead, a few expectations are clear. Large parts of research execution will be automated. Value will move decisively from execution to judgment. The insights ecosystem will be reshaped. Some vendors will reinvent themselves, others will disappear. Credibility and governance will become critical. As qual and quant blur, meaning and storytelling will be the real differentiators. And partnerships will play a bigger role, with consultancies and insight partners helping turn faster insights into clearer stories and better decisions. The direction is positive. But one question remains. How do we preserve originality and judgment when the tools and the paths are increasingly the same?
So our next question to Anne would be, when the same AI tools are being used by different insight teams, how would they make themselves more distinctive or differentiated from one another?
So I think you've just heard that, AI is already transforming the insights function, and I believe it's a very good thing. AI is, accelerating exploration and ideation. AI is scaling conversations. And in synthesis, it's extremely powerful at spotting patterns and connecting weak signals across complexity. But for me, what is really important and the shift that we need to consider is the following. When execution becomes automated, value moves from the work that we do to the judgment we apply onto things. When everyone has access to the same tools, I think differentiation doesn't come anymore from the tools and the platforms that you use. But again, it comes from the lens you apply onto things. It comes from your ability to interpret paradoxes. It comes from your ability to separate what people say from what they do. It comes from your ability to overlay your commercial acumen onto insights narrative. And ultimately, it comes from your ability to transform complexity into clear choices that resonate not only with your CMO, but also, and probably more importantly nowadays, with your CFO and with your commercial leaders. I think for me, another thing that is distinctive, that makes the great insights professional different from one another is their ability to storytell their narrative. This and bring meaning onto things. So yes, AI, again, can get us a lot of great input at speed, at scale, and in a very affordable way. But what truly makes, one insight team or insights professional distinctive from one another is, number one, their originality. Number two, their empathy. Number 3, their commercial judgments. And this clarity in conveying business recommendation is really important, and this is what cannot be copied.
Brilliant. So on the question and taking forward the idea of originality, I'm coming to the topic of synthetic data. So we'll start to look at an honest look at some of the AI and where it really adds value to insights and where caution is still really valued or needs to be instated. So the first video explores synthetic data and conversational AI, where they accelerate research, where limits need to remain, and why the distinction between stimulus and truth matters.
When we talk about AI and insights, we need to be honest about where it truly adds value and where caution is needed. Take synthetic data, digital twins, and synthetic personas. They're powerful for exploration, simulation, and early ideation, creative accelerators that help us move faster and test what-if scenarios under real constraints. But they're far more contested as sources of truth. Research is about human truth, and synthetic approaches are built on existing patterns. That means they risk amplifying the average and missing the unexpected, emotional, or culturally nuanced signals that matter most. I'm comfortable using synthetic data as stimulus. I'm not comfortable treating it as evidence. Conversational AI is different. AI-led interviews genuinely help scale qualitative research, quickly, affordably, and across markets, especially for early exploration and sensitive topics. But they still have limits. They struggle with deep emotion, cultural nuance, and probing. Ultimately, our role as insight leaders isn't to adopt everything. It's to decide what belongs where and why.
Great. So if you look at recent research, only half of the organizations have actually adopted synthetic data. And there are different ways leaders have talked about it. Some have been excited about it, some have been ambivalent and phenomenally ambivalent. And that might be because it is essentially at one point also considered a self-affirming loop. If we are treating or adding the same data to the same frame over and over again, we are essentially creating, replacing almost human judgment with mirroring of similar insights over and over again. And that's a caution against synthetic data. It has to be dynamic to add value. So the last question for you, Anne, would be, where does synthetic data fit into your organization today, and under what conditions would you truly trust it?
Well, I think when it comes to, again, insights and AI, we need to be honest with ourselves. And, we need to recognize where AI truly adds value, but also when caution is essential. I believe synthetic data, digital twins, and personas are extremely powerful for exploration. And we at Pladis already use them, in several areas, from early ideation to demand spaces refreshes, and also to actually filter large data sets and large ID sets. I think they are brilliant creative stimulators and what-if, accelerators. But they are far less contested, and you have heard, the video, and I agree with that, as sources of truth. And ultimately, research is about human truth. And the reason why, again, you've heard it in the video, and for me this is important, is that synthetic data are built from existing patterns. So what does this mean? This means that it risks amplifying the averages and miss all these emotional, unexpected cultural nuances that actually matters most in research. So while I'm very comfortable to use synthetic data as a stimulus, I'm not comfortable using them as evidence. Again, we heard about conversational AI. I think it's slightly different. Again, AI-led interviews are already helping to scale conversations and are very, very powerful, ways of exploring certain topics, and particularly sensitive topics. But again, where it falls short at the minute is, with deep emotion, cultural nuance, and probing. So for me, It's not about, deciding which one is better. It's about combining both. And it's about the recognition that true value comes from combining synthetic approaches with real consumer engagement while always overlaying your commercial judgment. And our role as insights leader at the end of the day is not about adopting everything. It's about deciding what belongs where and why.
Brilliant. Thank you. And to conclude, I'll take you through some of the interesting insights we found in this conversation. So the real risk in AI isn't bad output. It's actually homogeneous output. When everyone in the industry adopts the same AI tools, draws from same data pools, outputs, we start to converge. So the first one is, I'll borrow the words of a consumer electronics leader, there is a big risk of insight abundance without depth. What happens if all personas come out of the same frame? Where is the human touch that makes it distinctive, unique? That is the key question there. If every insight team feeds the same AI, the same data, and gets a similar output, we are not in the insights business. We actually get to the confirmation business then. The next one is starts with a quote from a FMCG industry leader, and it brilliantly puts it, too busy doing the work versus exploring ways in which to reimagine the work. And that is the adoption gap. It is not that people don't want to use AI. Instead, they are busy doing the work that AI is supposed to help them with. And the irony is almost too neat to see. It is essentially a very, very interesting way to look at AI adoption as well. And this one is actually my favorite. And it actually surprised us a bit. And this is being fed back by an FMCG leader. And they say, Gen Z is seeing the work environment as more transactional. There is no longer a hunger to apply AI unless you have it as part of their performance goals. And therefore, the generation we expect it to be the most AI native is in many cases wanting to be told to use it in a work context. So it actually might not be a generational gap. It becomes a leadership challenge to adopt AI. And so, in terms of synthetic data, one FMCG leader said, long term, if we rely on synthetic data, we will just end up with a self-confirming loop of insights. The whole point of insights is to learn something new, something different, as Anne said, something which is at the edges of our understanding. It can only reflect, if your research is only reflecting what is already known, it is actually not good insight. And if we feed AI itself long enough, we don't actually get insight. We actually get a very confident mirror. We are actually listening to the same thing over and over again in different words. So where does it leave us with? The map is becoming somewhat clearer, although the route is being debated quite a lot. Most teams are somewhere in the speed and synthesis zone. They are using a lot of AI to move faster, summarize clearer, and do more work. But the gap, as Anne mentioned, remains and shows in the governance and the trust area. It is the framework and the guardrails as well as the activation of those insights that will become key in the future. And the leaders, they talked about judgment and distinction. They talked about the fact that the AI will provide you the fodder, but it's the human brain that has to provide the judgment and take it forward. And that will give us the competitive advantage. So today we had sort of the opening act of this conversation. We talked about cognitive offloading, we talked about the Gen Z surprise, we talked about synthetic data, but it's very much a conversation that we will progress further. So we'd love to know if you would like us to probe certain areas in this sphere and subject. If you want to feedback, please scan the QR code or you can visit us at boltinsight.com. Lovely to have you here, and thank you.